is a process. It's a process. It's a process. Okay?
All right, pleased to welcome on Al Millar again. Thanks again, Al, for taking some time out of your day.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
So looking back at all the moves you made, did you envision yourself making 18 trades this year?
I don't really look at the number as much as maybe some others do. Like when you look at the number of moves, I think some of them were, I don't want to say, Kevin, they're minor in nature, but you know, they're just some things to for example, build our goalie pipeline, give Tabashnik an opportunity, a local kid. You know, we feel he can compete for a backup spot next year. Those types of deals. You know, I think for the most part, some deals happen because they needed to happen. We don't need to dive into the Vaughn situation any longer, but
yeah, for sure.
You know, that's something that was, you know, two moves there that you needed to move, and then from there, you know, we just, to be honest, we just got to a point where we're not going to be in with half a foot. We're in with a full foot. You know, we haven't shied away from the take down, tear it down, rebuild. It's the reality of the situation, and we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish in terms of building the young group. You know, building our prospect pool through some moves in our 09 group and some lists that we've made here over the last number of months, and the draft capital in terms of where it's at. So, you know, the moves we made, I felt, were moves that were, for the most part, good for the club, how we needed to move forward. I really was a little bit surprised at the number with media reports after the fact.
Yeah.
But it just comes back to that's what we needed to do.
So yeah, touching on the goalies, that's kind of was interesting. You kind of traded the same age group, one guy out, one guy in. Kind of what was the thinking there?
Well, the thinking was essentially that we felt that you know, Tabashnik has a better ceiling in terms of having a chance to play in the WHL. He's a bigger goalie. He's had success. Goaltender of the year last year. The run he's got the Pat C's on now, you know, was very good in the deciding game with a shutout. You know, that was a move that we were making irregardless of the other move. We were going down that path. And then it was a situation where a team called and they wanted to have a third goaltender on their list in case of injuries for call-up purposes. And we worked out a deal to give the other young man an opportunity with another team. But it was about building our goalie pipeline and a guy that we thought had the upside to play in the league starting next year.
So going back to the start of the season, obviously not the most ideal situation with two 19s coming into the season. Was there any thought that you were going to maybe go do something there, but nothing ended up working out for you?
We worked hard at adding that younger goaltender that would have been a roster player and potentially, you know, a number one guy a year or two down the road. We got very close to one deal, close to the deadline. We couldn't get it over the finishing line. The team, we went through a path, we negotiated, we come pretty close to the compensation, and then the team decided not to make the move, which is understandable. So, you know, not ideal with two 19-year-olds, Chris, as you said, but at the same time, you need to have options to fill those spots. Mm-hmm. And you know, so we're committed to building that goalie pipeline. We've talked about Tabashnik. We like the 09 Mooney a lot. Opportunity to spend some time with our team here the last couple weeks. 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. If we keep all those picks, I'm not sure how a goalie's not taken within that group to continue to build that pipeline. It's something that Dirk and I want to do, build that pipeline. We've talked about drafting one of the top 5 goalies on our goalie list every other year. You know, so we'll see how that plays out, and then, Huey's turning pro. Pine's going to compete for a spot on the team as a 20-year-old. We'll see what other moves may come up, but that's where we're at right now.
This is kind of just a question. In terms of speed, like what was the fastest trade you made this year?
The fastest trade I made
Did
this
someone
year.
phone you or you phone someone and say, we'll trade player X for pick Y, and it just happened like that? Or did you have anything like that? Anything super fast?
You don't have to specify who.
Just
Yeah.
in terms of speed, not in terms of players.
We had some deals that were real easy to make, right? I think we talked about this before, but when we had pushed the chips all in and what we were doing, and then I talked about how we needed to manage the roster in terms of making sure that we had opportunities for our young players to play. And we had to move out of Chichkin and then Wilson and give them other opportunities. Those deals came together fairly easily, fairly quickly. Brown and the first for Vaughn came together pretty quickly. Like you guys saw, we were dealing with the issue there on the Friday, and we made a move Saturday morning. 7th round pick for DePassionik. DePassionik happened pretty quickly with Brent. He wanted to give the young guy an opportunity. So some of them you find a quick fit. I'm a guy that usually, if I'm doing something, I usually have a price in my mind. I don't really screw around. Like if Wilson was a 4 and 6 and Pete wants him, Pete, it's a 4 and a 6, and Pete said, yeah, that's fair, let's do it.
And you obviously build some relationships with everybody, but it seems like you almost kind of go back and forth with some guys. Like you had 3 trades with Everett, obviously, and it just kind of rolls with that, right? Like hey, here's another guy, you're interested in him, kind of thing. And like you said, how the Temple kind of came out of the Vaughn situation there. So sometimes it just rolls quickly like that, right? Like
yeah, I think that the biggest thing in those relationships with general managers, and some guys are tougher than others. Some guys don't like to show their hand. They want you to always put forward what you're willing to do or who you like. And some other guys are very open. We have situations where players come on the wire. When I put a player on the wire and somebody calls, I usually have a price in mind. I say, this is what I think, and we go from there. But over the years, you build those relationships in terms of that relationship, that compatibility. Some guys like to talk trade, and then they never get a deal done. Other guys, Everett, the situation, the one trade was, young player for young player, and it is what it is. The other two were essentially, a real good team, a team in a rebuild. What did the fit look like for them to add a chance, to add a Vaughn, to have a chance to win? And the return for us, we were real pleased with. It's not a bad thing to have relationships with guys in the other conference, and you're able to work with them when they have a chance to win, and you look towards can that reciprocate in a year or two when we think we're at that level.
So now coming into the back half here, the scouting, like you've obviously been gone a while. You've been more busy now than you've been at the trade deadline. How has that kind of played out for you here?
It's been good. We've really dove into a lot of things around preparing for the drafts, watching our prospects, doing some recruiting, calls with players. Dirk and Tristan and I had a great call earlier in the week with Zach Zimmerman in Minnesota, his dad, in terms of the opportunities here in Regina. I went to Muskegon to see Nestrasil play. I went to Plymouth, Michigan to the U.S. National team rink there, saw Trottier play. Preparing for the import draft, we're going to go into a U.S. prospects draft with a high pick, with a lottery pick. In that situation, I think everybody understands the added value to those picks now with the NCAA rule change. So that's a significant pick. We're going to go into the Bantam draft, somewhere in the 2 or 3 spot, depending on what happens here between us and Kelowna. That's a significant pick. We're going to go into the import draft where we're going to pick, it looks like we're going to pick 4 or 7. Right now we would pick 4. If we went by Kelowna this weekend for some reason, we'd fall to 7. Those are things that you got to be on top of, and those are things that we need to prepare for. Hit the ground running. Spent a lot of time with the 2 Dales, McMullen and Durkach. We've been at the Canadian School Championships in Penticton. We went out in the middle of the night to watch Liam Pugh play at JPHL playoff game that I think started at 9 o'clock in Vernon. We didn't get back to Penticton till 1:32 in the morning. We were laughing driving back, like, we're grinding, boys. We're grinding. This is what it's all about. I spent 5 days in Winnipeg last week, 5 nights, 6 days. I watched the underage, the 2010, playing for the under-18 Wheat Kings, Nickel twice. I watched Matejchuk twice. I watched Rollison play for the Bruins. I watched Kurtz play for the Wild. I watched Mann play for the Junior Blues. We got through family weekend here. It was important for me to be here on family weekend. But after that, I told the coaches, I told Pritch, I said, guys, my priority is to get on the road. I'm not going to see our team play very much. I watch every game, either live or the next day on video. Talk to the coaches every day, to stay on top of things. But the second half of the season after the deadline was what it was. The current situation, the coaches understood the balance between remaining as competitive as we could and playing our young guys and developing our young guys. You're seeing a lot of 15-year-olds and that get an opportunity here down the stretch. A lot of that is we've had some significant injuries along the way here, but I had to get on the road with our guys and focus on the future of this club.
Speaking of the import draft, how do you approach that, not knowing a lot of the players?
Well, we have a couple platforms that we utilize. We have a subscription to a scouting service that only works with a limited number of teams in the CHL on the import draft. We get scouting reports, lists, agent information, contact information through that service. Our video platform that we have is worldwide, so we do a lot of video work in terms of the import draft. Ultimately, the import draft is very, very agent driven. So those relationships, I've had 2 meetings over the last few weeks with what I would consider relevant agents around the import draft. One agent that was here visiting some NHL players that are his clients from Czechia. Him and I got together for a coffee one morning in Calgary, spent a couple hours together, and then other agents. So, we just start to work that process. Lists get sent to us. You keep an eye on NHL draft lists. Obviously you go into the draft and, we'll be looking at 07s that have been drafted or 08s that are, potentially high picks in the following draft. That scenario around adding Nestrasil, potentially, top 7 pick in the draft. Those are valuable players that we need. We need them to be impact players. Maybe not at 17, but we need to project them as impact players when they're 19 and how that's built around the rest of our group.
So heading into the prospects draft here, you're gonna have a high pick and then you got a later pick in the first. Is there almost more pressure, or I don't know if you feel any pressure picking that high, or is it just comes down to you just doing your job right?
No pressure. Yeah, I think that surrounded by good people. I think Dale Durkach has hit the ground running and doing a real good job for us in terms of our preparations for the draft. I'm I'm a draft list guy. You work hard at your list, and then you trust it on draft day. The next guy up should be your guy. Best player available. You only draft by position when the players are almost equal on your list. You don't go way down your list to draft by position or type of player. But if they're close, then you can talk about position. You can talk about a right shot D. You can talk about a power forward. You can talk about a big stay-at-home hard matchup PK type of defenseman. Those type of things. But I think we're very comfortable from 1 to 5 in the draft where our pick looks like it would fall. But if we win the lottery and we pick 1, there's going to be no added pressure. We know what we're doing.
Yeah. Is it now that there's multiple leagues, like you got the school league, you've got the club championships and stuff like that, and then you got like Pew in the JPHL, is it getting harder to almost compare some of these guys, or like how do you kind of compare them, that aren't playing together kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't like. There's, the Pew thing with them playing in GPHL and playing under 18. I hear guys talking about it's hard to evaluate them playing in that league. I don't see it. I see a 14-year-old kid playing against 17-year-olds and doing real well. And being challenged competitively because they're coming at him, and he handles it real well. So, for me, certainly the competitiveness of a game, the competitive of a league, where a team is at in terms of, are they a good team or not? That's all part and parcel of the process you go through. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's you're focused on the draft eligible guys, the guys that your team is interested in, and I don't really see, and Dirk Hatch and I have talked about this. We don't really see that as a challenge. We're there to evaluate players. For me, when I go to games, I'm pretty focused on the top guys in a game. I'm not going to overrule our guys for someone they're banging the table for in the 6th round. But with 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, I'll be involved. Obviously, Dirk will take a lead role. But the pressure part of it, Chris, I don't feel it. I feel being doing it long enough. I wouldn't say that about my first draft 30 years ago as a GM. But feel good enough about our group and our preparations, and I look at it that 9 picks in the first 2 rounds, the next 2 drafts, 2 first-rounders, this draft, 5 picks. The excitement around, what does the end of that day look like? Did we use all 5 picks to draft? Did we make any moves? Did we add any players? Were we able to improve something on our team because of the draft capital we've built? I think it's exciting for the franchise. I know it's exciting for our scouts, and I've made the comment that if we have 9 picks in the first 2 rounds of the next 2 drafts, that should be the foundation. If we do our jobs, that should be the foundation of a consistent competitive team for a long time here.
Do you happen to see yourself maybe moving one of those those picks for like an 06 or a 07?
Everything's on the table, Kevin, for me. We're gonna, I know I'm gonna get asked the question at the end of the year here. Not necessarily saying you guys were gonna ask, but you're gonna get the question: are you a playoff team next year? I'm not going to make any predictions in terms of where we're going to be in the fall, but I know that we've built what we've built with the expectations to take a good step next year, and everything's on the table, and that's potential moves that we might make. We built that draft capital to not necessarily use them all on drafting players. We built that draft capital to be able to improve our team, whether it's this summer or during the season or a year from now. That's an important part of what we built. And the other thing too I can tell you is that we're going to expect significant improvement from within our group. And the leash isn't going to be as long as it's been the last couple of years. It's not going to be. We're going to be looking at probably as I don't know the history of Regina Pat's every training camp. You know better than me, Kevin, but this one's going to be pretty damn competitive. If we look at
sounds really good.
if we look at 20 returning players, Then you look at the number of 09s we have signed and them coming in to compete for a spot. If you look at the other 08s we have signed, them coming to compete for a spot. You look at the influence of the potential of some Americans now coming to camp. You look at some of the guys on our college list. You know, a Brock Such, for example. Does he want to come to camp and compete for a spot on our team? You look at the imports coming in. You look at, say, we make 2 or 3 trades during the off season. Then all of a sudden you're looking at 32, 34 guys competing for 22, 23 spots. You know, and I think one thing that we've had to do here over the last couple of years was have a long leash. Like, guys stayed when they were underperforming. That's not going to be the case. If you're an older guy next November 1 and you're not doing what you're doing, someone's going to go by you, or we're going to find someone that's going to replace you. And that's just the commitment that we have now to, hey, the heavy lifting's done. We've grinded through what's been real tough. Now we're committed to, you know, protecting the rebuild the right way, and not to go stupid, not to be crazy, but we're going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more relentless in terms of adding what we need to do to improve our team. But at the same time, a lot of that falls on our players as well. Our expectations in terms of our player group that's here now, and the step that we need to take as a group, how they need to take a step individually, how we take that step collectively as a team, that's going to be up to them in terms of, you know, their time in their gym, their preparations, them getting prepared for what our expectations are in the fall. And if you don't show that, if you don't show that, then someone's going to go by you. A younger player is going to be better. And you know, so that'll be a big part of what we talk about tomorrow. You know, when I meet with the team before our exit meetings and we go through the exit meetings. But part of my message is going to be, hey guys, here's the math. 20 plus 2 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 doesn't equal 22 roster spots. So be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, the floor, the talent floor is, you've really brought that up, and like you said, all these potential players coming into camp, and then you're only losing 3 bodies naturally here at the end of the season, right? So there isn't a lot of open spots for now, right? So it's kind of up to the players here. And so how do you kind of evaluate this back half of this season? Like, obviously you said you've watched every game, but you know the team has struggled here, especially lately. What's your thoughts there?
Well, I honestly, you know, we knew that, you know, we knew when we woke up January 10th that there was going to be some tough nights. That's just the reality. When you make the moves you make and you're the youngest team in the league, and then along the way you lose Babcock and Bridgman for a few game stretch. You know, Whitehead seasons ends. You know, other injuries that we've had. You know, but you know, for the most part, and hey, there's the anomaly of, you know, the 7-1 loss to Moose Jaw here was, you know, I was pissed off. But
well, especially after you take Medicine Hat 1-0 twice, right?
Take Medicine Hat. We, you know, if the referees had done their job late in the game in Lethbridge, we win that game. With, you know, they need to make that call and they don't tie the game. You know, we take Lethbridge to them beating us 4-2 with an empty netter, with Hayden Wagner on the back end in Lethbridge, and 4 other 17-year-olds and Babcock and Bridgman sitting in the stands from injuries. You know, so you know, played real well. Wenatchee, beat Swift Current a couple of times. There's been more positives than negatives, Chris. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, my message to the team after the trade deadline was, I know what we are, okay? We know, you know, what we had to do here. Mm-hmm. Everybody might not be happy about it, but that's the reality of the situation. I said, I'm not evaluating wins and losses here. We're evaluating how we win and how we lose. And we're evaluating the steps that we take that we're getting better. I think our young players have improved. Our young players have gotten better. I think our structure and details have been better. They're not always going to be perfect when you're rolling 12, 13, 16, and 17-year-olds out every night. But there's been more positives than negatives, and ultimately at the end of the day, we've been just as competitive with this group than we were with what we had in October and November.
Oh, do you have any final thoughts for Pats fans that are listening to this? about this season and about next season and the future?
Well, you guys have known that I've tried to be honest, tried to be transparent. This has been hard, whether you're a season ticket holder, a casual fan that comes 6-8 times a year, our corporate partners, they're all important to us. So our messaging around that transparency and what we're trying to do, and hey, not everybody's going to agree with every move you make. Not everybody's going to agree. Like, there probably are people that thought, well, Millar could have added, Millar could have kept this guy, and we'd be, but we just evaluated that doesn't help us in the big picture. It's just patchwork along the way here. So, I think, I've said, the fans is that, we're going to get better. I think the team has been more entertaining here with the young group that has come in. We have a process, trust the process. We talk about the steps of being competitive, and that's being a playoff team, and we talk about building the next team to contend for a championship. And, our expectations is that we're playing meaningful hockey in March and April next year.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. So thank you very much for your time again tonight.
Guys, pleasure. And I just, again, I want to thank you guys for your commitment to the organization, your commitment in terms of the messaging that you get out to our great fans, and look forward to more Pats Cast.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
This has been a Millar Time presentation. Thank you for your time.